So that transcultural or transhistorical desire to have some sense of legitimacy, some sense of greater justice that organizes whatever polity, whatever governing body we live within, creates the situation, the extraordinary situation or staging of Act 4, wherein the crown passes from Richard II, the king on the throne by divine right, to Henry IV, or Bolingbroke turning into Henry IV. And that's the reason that that scene is so extraordinary and so complicated. And what Shakespeare renders there is not just great drama. He registers the real political problem, political reality of this transfer of power and this desire for legitimacy or greater good or sense of justice in our governing bodies, because it can't just be Bolingbroke snatching the crown from Richard II. That would render the entire government simply a violent, nasty, uh, tougher than tough mess. What Shakespeare records here in the dramatic staging is something else, or he tries to capture something else. Richard II giving the throne over, giving the crown over, even though this really complicates our notion of the gift, which we've talked about before, right? Uh, uh, it's not really a gift. Richard's not giving it of his own free will, it's being taken from him. Yet the whole scene is staged as if, to borrow some language from St. Paul, as if Richard II is doing it on its own. And in this act, this theater has to take place, not just in the theater, but in real life, in order for everyone involved to preserve the sense that there's something more to us than continually warring fractions. We never want to give up on that ideal and just sort of say, hey, it's all about what's called realpolitik, right? That life is just brutish, nasty, and short, as Thomas Hobbes said. There's something more, and we all kind of desire it. That's part of the process here. So when Richard II comes in, Shakespeare creates an extraordinary scene. This is Act 4, Scene 1, lines 161. Alack, why am I sent for to a king, before I have shook off the regal thoughts wherewith I reigned? I hardly yet have learned to insinuate, flatter, bow, and bend my knee, give sorrow leave, while to tutor me to this submission. Yet well I remember the favors of these men. Were they not all mine? Did they not sometime cry, all hail to me? So Judas did to Christ. He says, well, but he in 12 found truth in all but one, I in 12,000 none. God save the king, will no man say amen? And no man, of course, will. And Richard says here, well, I'll have to play both roles. I will be both the priest and the clerk. Well then, amen. God save the king, although I be not he. And yet, amen, if heaven do think him me, to do what service am I sent hither for? And York steps in and says, to do that office of thine own good will, which tired majesty did make thee offer, the resignation of thy state and crown to Henry Bolingbroke. In short, you are come to give away the crown, right? And again, this is Shakespeare's always interested in locating that strange logic of the gift, right? The fact that we never truly give anything. We exchange, we economize, we trade, but rarely do we give, right? In fact, we never give. It's an impossibility. And we'll see that a bit more with the Merchant of Venice. King Richard goes on in this way. He says, King Richard, give me the crown. He takes the crown. Here, cousin, seize the crown. Here, cousin, on this side my hand, and on that side thine. Now is this golden crown like a deep well that owes two buckets filling one another, the empty over dancing in the air, the other down unseen and full of water. That bucket down and full of tears am I, drinking my griefs whilst you mount up on high. And I love this imagery, the picture, and please look at that clip, but of the two grasping the crown, right? And there's this empty space in the middle. And that empty space is again that desire for justice, that desire for a way of governing, a way of being together as men that isn't simply reduced to who can be more violent, who can win the war. It's a desire for justice that we can never quite identify, right? It's like the empty space of the crown.